Hello and welcome to yesterday's airlines. Today at the channel I have the new ngmodels Airbus A330, 800 and 900neo samples, exclusive to the channel. I've just brought these back from the Amsterdam Aviation Fair, which I was at last weekend, where these were on show. It was fabulous to meet up with loads of different collectors and other people in the community. Had a really good time, and I was very lucky to be able to pick up a box of 16 different samples that NG had sent through. I'm gradually trying to get through these samples with reviews and videos, so please bear with me. I have a day job as well. If you haven't already, please check out the written review for these A330neo molds on the website. But in this video, we'll be taking a closer look at these on the video, and I'll get them spinning on the turntable as well. As I'm sure the majority of you know, NG already have a pretty solid set of A330 CEOs, so the expectation that these Neos would be good is high, and broadly they are good. They aren't perfect, but they are good, and NG have already told me that they will be fixing the issues that I will point out in this video. So before we get into the detail of looking at these samples, I just want to say, please subscribe to the channel, chuck a like on the video, and thank you very much for watching. Also, as I just said, get over to yesterdaysairlines.com for loads of great content, including the written reviews of these samples, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well at yesterairlines. But let's get on and have a look at these A330neos. Okay, so before I look at the samples exclusively, obviously they don't live in isolation. There are other brands with A330neo molds in 400 scale. In fact, there are 3 others. I've got 2 here on show with the sample. On the left here, we've got the jcwings Gemini mold, which is generally a really good mold, but does have bit of a wing dihedral issue. Then we've also got the new AV400 mold here, which I still haven't really had a chance to look at closely in detail myself. Comes with new magnetic landing gear. So we've already got 2 quite new and strong contenders. And there's also the Phoenix mold, which isn't dreadful either, but isn't spectacular too. I do have some Phoenix ones, but not really recent releases. So there's plenty of A330neos to choose from in 400 scale, which means these NG samples really need to be quite good. But obviously, you'd expect over the next 10 to 20 years for Airbus to be selling quite a large number of Neos. I know they haven't sold too well at this point, but that's partly, I think, because there are so many young CEOs floating around on the market. The airlines haven't needed the Neos. I think they will, and I think they will sell well. So I'm sure you'll be seeing lots and lots of A330, 800s and 900s. Well, maybe not 800s, but plenty of 900s anyway over the next decade. And that's why it's an important mold for NG to be producing, I guess, in 400 scale. So up here on the stand, and I must say that it doesn't fit to the stand very well. It's a bit wobbly. It seems to have quite a large stand hole, this sample. Looks really great. Looks just like an A330 should, as you'd expect, considering they've already got excellent A330 molds. Then there are no problems with the nose or nose gear or cockpit region. That looks excellent. And just quickly swivel her around before we take her off the stand and get her in close up. You can see that broadly looks really good. You can also see that, yeah, it doesn't fit very well to the stand. So let's take her off and get her in close up and have a look at that nose and cockpit region. Here we go. As you can see, really good profile and really nice gear as well. I don't see any problems here, and you wouldn't expect there to be, considering, as I say, the existing A330 molds. Again, when you move to the wing join area, that again looks really nice, really crisp. Some really nice sculpting, especially of the fairing of the rear portion here. All really nice. And moving along to the rear fuselage again, no problems at the tail cone either. And obviously the fuselage here should be pretty much the same as on an A330-300. So that's all great. The big differences with the Neo are obviously the engines, hence why it's called the Neo. And you can see here we've got very nice and chunky new engines for this mold here, with actually a really good shape to the nacelle, some really nice detailing. And if I just get the camera to focus again, which is always a challenge with these little things. Some really nice work on the exhaust area too. Can't argue with that. Looking great. And the pylon shape is also very nice. Now it's got the same undercarriage, I think, as the CEOs have. So this does not pivot, which I know is off-putting to some. I personally don't mind. I don't display that many I models on stands. I'm quite happy for it to be static. The gear roll, obviously, but the bogie itself doesn't pivot. Moving to the front of the engines, and NG, as in keeping with recent design choices, are going for a solid core fan. They believe that this shares a lot more realness, is that a word? A lot more reality to it, a lot more accurate. And I have to say that I tend to agree with them. If I look at, for example, the engines on the AV400 one, you see the fans are very thin, so you can see through. And similarly, if I get the jcwings mold here, you have the same kind of thing going. They both look okay, but none of them look as real as the as the NG version here, with these much wider fan blades, which still have this nice, really nice texturing and detailing. And I've counted up the fan blades, got the right number, and they are oriented correctly. So the engines are looking really superb, I think. And there is also plenty of ground clearance with these engines, which is also nice as well. If I can just move her on to this, you can see hopefully there is plenty of ground clearance for the engines. That looks good as well. Now, the other thing which is the big difference for this Neo are the winglets. A different design. I think it's inspired by the A350 as I understand it, and you can see that they've got this really nice sculptured shape. Again, I'm going to try and get the camera to focus here. Here we go. You can see that it sculpts in really nicely here, moves in and then up, and the winglets are actually surprisingly small when you look at it from the front. But I actually checked out the size of these winglets on the real aircraft, and I was surprised to see how small they actually are. And that's something I've not really picked up before in my previous reviews, because, for example, if I compare these to the winglets on the JC molds, you can see how much taller they are, but also the shape is different as well. And I have to say that when you compare the two, it is the NG version which is more accurate. And that's not just an issue with the JC mold either, I might add. That is also something which I hadn't picked up, probably should have done, with the AV400 one. The winglets here do seem a little bit smaller, but again, the shape of the winglets is not quite as nicely sculpted. So that's a really big plus for these NG Neos. The winglet shape, I think that's really good. It makes a really accurate A330neo. Something that isn't very accurate, and probably the biggest issue with the molds, are the flapjack fairings. The flapjack fairings on the A330neo should not be this pointy as these are. They should be a lot more squared off. That is something that is correct on the jcwings mold. And if I compare the two, you can see that they are a lot chunkier, a lot squarer, the profile of them, whereas the ones on the NG mold are quite long and pointy. So that's something that I've told NG about. They're going to change. Another issue which was noticed by, not by myself actually, but by another collector, Phantom, good work, he's in for the ultimate details, is the size of the vertical stabilizer. The vertical stab should be the same as on the A330-300. And here's an NG A330-300. You can see slightly, if I try and hold these together at the same place, that it is a bit taller on this A330-900, and it shouldn't be. It should be the same. So again, that is something which I've alerted NG2 that they've got a slightly oversized vertical stabilizer on this sample. But overall, you have to say, these are looking good. Let's get her on to the turntable. And there she is onto the turntable. Okay, cool. So yeah, as I was saying, I think that in general, it's looking like a really, really good A330-900 here. The fuselage provides no concerns. The wings are excellent. The engines are really good. It's just those flap track fairings under the wings there that are quite the wrong shape at the moment. Should be a relatively easy fix, hopefully. And if they just take the tail off their existing A330, then again, that should not be an issue in the long term at all. So those things are really quite minor, I think, and should be quite easily fixable. Moving on to the shorter A330-800 variant. This one is not selling particularly well. It's about the same size as the A330-200, but it has obviously got the Neo features, the new wings, and the new engines. And again, the Mould has effectively exactly the same look and feel as the Series 900. It's still got the issues with flapjack fairings, and it also still has the issue with the tail, but not quite the same. The tail on the A330-800 should actually be taller than the tail on the 900, but it is still on this Mould slightly too tall, because if you do a quick comparison of each of these, you can see when I compare the 800 on the left here to the 900, that the tail is ever so slightly taller even than the tail on the 900. So it's almost as if really what they need to do is switch the 900 tail over to the 800 and then just take the tail off of the Series 300 for their standard 900 series. But otherwise, as you can see here, it has all the attractiveness of their other A330s, which are, you have to say, probably the best A330s on the market at the moment, or certainly up there with the best. Okay, back on to the turntable for the conclusion. As I think I've said multiple times in this video already, these are looking really nice. A couple of quick changes to the flapjack fairings and swapping the tail out with the 300 will basically see these effectively become near perfect A330s in the scale, I have to say, for the Neo. They've got some good competition. I quite like the jcwings mould. It's probably the best of the existing ones. I'm not 100% convinced from what I've seen by the nose and undercarriage of the AB400 version, though they've told me they are going to change that. Also, you've got the Phoenix one. None of them are dreadful, but I have to say that these ones from ngmodels are looking like they probably will be the best, assuming that they obviously fix the small issues that I've raised. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, that's it from yesterday's airlines.